Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Willoughby, and I'm on the Undergraduate Poster Committee for the 2021 GSS at the Odom School. So this is going to be a poster presentation primer video to hopefully introduce you to what academic posters are, show you some examples and some of the components you should think about when preparing your own poster. And this will be in addition to several drop-in workshops the poster committee will be hosting on January 27th. So those will be an opportunity to bring materials and then work with the graduate student in preparing your poster. First, well, what is an academic poster? In many cases, we can think of academic posters as condensed research articles. So you're going to see a lot of the same sections and structures, but it's also a way to communicate your science in a new and more visual format. So we've seen journals introduce these graphical abstracts, and you can really think of a poster as an opportunity to tell the story of your research and really drive home some of the standout findings that your research study found. So let's talk about aesthetics. These are going to be online. In non-COVID times, they would be printed out in a hall. So some things you want to keep in mind with your poster is you want it to be pretty and visually appealing. Some ways you can do that are by thinking about the rule of thirds. So if we have a poster, we can, think about visually where thirds would be in. And that might be how you break out your poster with different sections. You could put something, really eye-catching in one of these corner points, but we naturally like rule of thirds. Another thing to keep in mind is dark text on a light background looks a lot better than light text on a dark background. So, I mean, it doesn't need to be white and black. You can certainly play with your colors, but keep that in mind. Also, because this is a more visual, you certainly might want to focus on, pretty pictures. If you have an image, make sure it is at greater or equal to 300 dpi. You want to have really good image quality. And I would also say that figures or graphs are a lot better than tables. They just translate better in the poster format. So those are some things to keep in mind with the aesthetics. I find that people are getting more creative with their color palettes, and a good resource to kind of validate, is this a nice color palette? Can I explore different color palettes? Is this coolers.co? You can go on there, it's free, and you can just flip through and generate different color palettes. If you find a color you like, you can lock that color and explore other color palettes. So this is kind of a fun thing to do at the beginning of your poster where you're saying, well, I really want blue. How can I, have some interesting colors that will help perhaps breaking up that three sections of your poster, or adding, one box for emphasis. So let's move on to like what a traditional format for a poster would be. Typically, you have all your most valuable stuff. This is really valuable real estate up at the top, and less valuable stuff is down at the bottom. So we would put the title here. So say the traditional format is our title, we would have our title, and then you would write your authors and be sure to have people's affiliations. So you could write, 1 Odom School, to, and this is where it's really important to communicate with your co-authors, you know, what are their affiliations? What do I need to make sure? Do you like your middle initial included? Do you not like that included? Just so you're on the same page. And then you can typically either have like a color divider or an actual line to divide the poster. And then we might go into these, you know, thirds of columns where we would have a background section, methods. We would have, you know, maybe a color blocked square with some results. So maybe like 2 big graphs of findings. You know, even though figure legends can be smaller font, you still want to be conscious of can people read this? If I were to print this out on a piece of paper and put it, you know, hold it with my arm straight, would I be able to read that text? So don't go too small and try and be as brief and concise as possible. But there might be ways for you to highlight certain things either by you know, pointing to a line, so you could add like an extra text box about what something interesting or some outliers that you want to identify, or, you know, change the color of the text or bold text to emphasize different things. And then you might have, you know, a conclusions and future directions. And certainly, you know, you could create an image if you have an upcoming experiment or a new component that you would like to add. You know, it'd be nice to have an image or two, probably in the method section or conclusions. And then you do still need to have references. So while an academic paper might require, you know, 20 plus references, typically you can stay between like, you know, 5 to 10 references in your poster. So you would have a little section for references. You could also have, you know, acknowledgements. So check with your PI, is there funding that I need to acknowledge? Are there logos? So sometimes, you know, the NSF logo would be, you know, a pretty sign, and you can put the logo up at the top. So that's, in a nutshell, a traditional format, academic posters. And these are really helpful because in some ways they are lining up with whatever future paper you might be writing. So let's look at an example of a traditional format. Okay, so this is a paper, a poster by one of the Odom graduate students, Daniel Sa, that he presented this past year. And you can see how he used that that rule of thirds, where he made 3 different columns. He made sure his figures were really big. Some things that I like about this is he, you know, had a little section for research questions over here, where, you know, he put these in different colors and kind of factored in what his research questions are. Really, you only need 1 or maybe 2 research questions. He has 3 here. I also like how he has, you know, a conceptual figure of his model that he's using, in addition to the specific discussion features. Some things he probably could have done better are, you know, this is a really long figure legend. So maybe condensing that and, you know, having bigger axis titles could have helped. You know, some of the text sizes are a little bit hard to read. But overall, I really like how he breaks down into these sections of, you know, he has a transmission analysis, a host community analysis, and a correlation analysis, and all 3 of these, you know, link to those 3 research questions he did. You know, he has some future discussion points, and then he makes sure to include, all the logos. He has them at the top and at the bottom. So that's one way to incorporate stuff. Another kind of technique he used is he bolded important components in his introduction. So if there's a particular term you want to hit home, bold, using it sparingly, but when you use it, it can be very effective. Okay, next we're going to talk about this kind of movement that's called the Better Posters movement. So we talked about how there's like a lot of text in those traditional formats. A better poster is a way to like kind of move even more towards that graphical abstract where you're really hitting home a major point. So in this case, we do use the rule of thirds where you break down. But instead of like having a title and then these different sections, you're going to block out that main section of your poster and have it be, my main finding. So after all this work of a research project, you really want to be able to synthesize what you did into saying, temperature increased the growth rate of salamanders, or whatever it might be. And you can really hit this home by making it really bold text so people, get your message. So this would be in a much larger text than you would typically see, so size 70 text or something. And you might have, some figure or conceptual, like of your study organism to emphasize that. And then we would see those regular sections on the thighs, but they're smaller and more concise. So you might have research questions, and then you might have methods, and then, future work. So while this might look simpler, it actually is like a bit harder to really refine what you're saying and putting it into this really concise and visually striking poster. I think a good example of this would be out of the University of Wisconsin. This is an undergraduate poster where she found grassland patches surrounded by less grassland contain more monarch butterflies compared to patches with more surrounding grassland. And she does several things to really hit home this message. This is in massive text. She bolded some sections. It's really pretty. She has her study organism here, as well as like a kind of a picturesque version of the grasslands. Still having that same title and authors and author affiliations. So here she breaks it down with problem, however, prediction, approach. There's a small, picture of the study sites. Wisconsin is a really recognizable state. So even though this is really reduced, you kind of get an idea, okay, they were doing things in the south and the west of Wisconsin, and there were several different, so 60 different sites. There's still some other results in a more traditional approach on the side with some conclusions and next steps. What we really like about this is there is some blank spaces. So, on the sides of her poster, you can see these text columns are buffered by white space. That's really helpful for framing and just like making the speak condensable. Arguably this is all blank space, but it really emphasizes her point. So here's a good example of what a better poster is. You can certainly Google other options. And this kind of, it's taking a bit of more of a risk. So with that traditional approach and the better poster approach in mind, I want to showcase two posters which I think blend the two. So first is one of the undergraduate posters from last year, Farron Smith. I think she did a really great job of still doing this rule of thirds, but in a more horizontal perspective. So that's a little bit different, taking some risk with a really colorful palette, but, like having a map, having this survey figure, and really breaking it down into, so main questions, who, how, having kind of a flow diagram at the beginning of explaining, okay, what is the project she's talking about? What are the different steps that each sample had to go through? Adding, just some pictures that are high quality. And, also, emphasizing here's the big finding, primary insights, that's in bold, it's in a separate box of color. So it really emphasizes the finding, and then also having some future directions, because you can also always have further engagement. So in this case, she has a QR code, which links to the survey that she used. So a way that people can understand her methods a little bit more. I've also seen people have links to, more of a written document, links to important background paper or a website that might be relevant to that work. So you can always add in these little things just in case, someone might be more interested and wants to engage a little bit more. And another option that's kind of a blend between the traditional and the better poster approach is this paper from Claire Teitelbaum, one of our graduate students that she presented this past year. Some things that she did that I think are really effective are having a really snazzy color palette, so it's eye-catching. She breaks it down into these, different horizontal columns. And, using boxes sparingly. So, she has a box for her data here. Here, I can go to white. She has her data boxes here and data boxes here. Adding little figures just to reinforce something you're saying in text. So like this section is talking about winter and summer temperature and has a little thermometer. She adds a tree for biomass and a little land sketch for the land cover. So having a way to communicate both in text and visually what variables she's talking about. I also like how she, cuts out her spatial models and then emphasizes, what not only does she show you the map, but she emphasizes, I really want you to understand that this is like the change in the Northeast is what I'm emphasizing by adding that arrow and some text explanation. And then, so she also uses bold to emphasize some of her big findings and also has a different color palette. And obviously, like, this was a big project where she can't write down everything. So she does have links in this that would go to a more descriptive document. But I think overall, she pares down all of her findings and methods into a very palatable poster. So those were just some of the ways that people are approaching academic posters. I hope this gave you ideas for how to approach your own poster in the future. Okay. Bye.